Let's start with the elephant in the room. This year's United Nations high-level meeting was hailed as a milestone for non-communicable diseases, but most diabetes advocates are calling it a watered-down document. Why? Who dropped the ball? The diplomats, the WHO, or the diabetes community itself? That's the question we are asking today because this year's UN high-level meeting on NCDs has left a lot of people wondering if diabetes got lost somewhere in the fine print. And to help us decode what really happened and what it means for low and middle income countries, we have got three powerhouses with us today. Leena, one of the most respected voices in global health and access to medicines, and a legal expert who has been shaping South Asia's access movement for years. James, president of Voices in Action and a driving force behind bringing lived experience right into global health policy rooms. And Lucy, lawyer, advocate, and type 1 diabetes warrior from Spain, working to make access and policy more human centered worldwide. Thank you all for joining. I'll let each of you quickly introduce yourself and your first reaction when you saw this year's United Nations declaration. Starting from you, Leena.
I just wanted to make two quick points on the UN high-level meetings that happen on different therapeutic areas. And one of the most important things NCDs do is set a target for countries to achieve in terms of how they are going to mitigate a particular public health challenge. And I think this is something that we've used across health systems when we go to court on the right to health, to say that the UN high-level meetings and the statements that come post that, which are actually signed by very high level, for example, the ministries of health, usually set the tone for country targets. Okay. And also set the tone for what we can ask for in court in terms of targets. So I think one thing that comes to mind is that sometimes even a weak declaration can play into your hands if you do a proper analysis. And I think this is very important that we actually publish an analysis of the UN high-level meeting in the sense that how we can use it, but also where the gaps are and how we can start looking at ways of addressing those gaps through other mechanisms, say, for example, constitutional rights through a court mechanisms and so on. And number two, I wanted to say this, that one of the things that I've really learned from is that, by saying that you let us down in a UN high-level meeting in XYZ kind of context, always gets some member states to take the lead in being more proactive than what the UNHLM actually dictates in terms of targets and other things. And lastly, I think where the UNHLM largely failed is this, that it wasn't that governments and public health programs are not aware that NCD is a big challenge, right? You can see South Africa, you can see countries starting to think of an NCD program, okay? But if you don't provide the tools on transparency, pricing, how to manage big pharma, competition, intellectual property, regulatory issues, technologies like pens and analogs and rapid acting, and of course, long acting insulin, then of course, countries, we lose out because you haven't prescribed the tools that we can use with government.
Yeah.
So I think these are two areas that I would say, let's do a quick and dirty analysis and then use this momentum where we say that this is not enough to build a movement with activists who might be interested.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll talk about it in detail for sure. James?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Leena is saying. Like, even a weak declaration, you still have to analyze what happened. I think we should not sugarcoat it. It sucked. It was a bad declaration. So, I mean, specifically, talking about from the diabetes standpoint, when we saw the first couple drafts come out, we had the global diabetes coverage targets, we want 100% of people living with type 1 to have insulin and ability self-monitor by 2030. That was going to be like our landmark sort of thing. We also had a lot of the language on meaningful engagement that was stronger. We had mention of insulin, we had mention of type 1. And then somewhere along the line, they stripped it all out, and I asked the Canadian mission, like, okay, well, why did you make those changes? And they said, well, there was like streamlining. Some of the member states wanted to streamline. I'm like, okay, but you went from 10 pages to 15, but you added 5 pages, but you took out everything that mattered to us. So yeah, I think we need to face reality that it sucked. I mean, they said that they had to streamline it and compromise, but it was still voted down by the US and Argentina, so it still hasn't passed. And this is the fourth one. I know also people in the type 2 community were quite angry that, GLP-1s, no mention of GLP-1s, which are very important modalities for them. And you can't say they weren't thinking about diabetes because they opened the meeting talking about a young girl living with type 1 in Zimbabwe. So we're on their mind. They're very happy to use us. They're very happy to use our stories. They're very happy to use our connections. And a lot of us put a lot of time into that declaration. And frankly, who's at fault? I think the member states are definitely at fault. There's no way to say that. It's a member state driven process. So they stripped out for whatever reason. And I actually asked NCD Alliance when I was in Geneva last week, like, who's the anti type 1 member state, right? Like who's the member state who like wanted to like strip us out? And the two responses, one was that, well, the global diabetes coverage targets were a WHO thing, and the States is just attacking everything WHO just to do it. And then the second one, which was even more disappointing, was she said, well, it could have just been a careless revision. And if you think about the word careless, it means you do not have care. You couldn't care. So I think it raises a broader question for us as a diabetes community. Do we really need to be spending time and energy into processes that ignore us? Or do we take that time and energy into things like national level debates, into regional level processes? I think that's an interesting point for me.
Absolutely. We'll come back to you, James. Lucía?
Yes, well, thank you so much for these perspectives. I'm going to bring one that is slightly different but completely connected, and that is that at the moment we are living in a moment where the political situation, the world is unpredictable, polarized, and many human rights are not even being respected, not to mention the right to health. Even the right to life is at stake at this moment. And despite these challenging conditions, we made it with a political declaration that's quite decent, and that for the first time recognized the expertise of people living with health conditions, including diabetes. So for the first time, we are obtaining a tool to demand our governments that we are experts, that we have something to say in policy making, that we can improve our health systems. And that's a huge achievement. Of course, one that is not as ambitious as we would have liked, but it's a baby step, a first step that we have to celebrate, because nothing like this existed. And if we start talking about 10 years ago, well, we were just patients. What do you patient know? So we have advanced a lot. Now we are a part of a political declaration that's acknowledging explicitly our expertise. That's a lot. Besides that, we have two targets for access to essential medicines in WHO essential medicine list, at least 80% in facilities in all countries, and 60% of financial protection measures in place. So that's also a huge win. Okay, it could have been better. And it would ideally be even better if we didn't have the opposition of the United States and Argentina. But at the moment, we have obtained powerful tools to keep working for our mission.
Yes. Let's discuss this in detail. And that's our panel. Policy, advocacy, and lived experience all in one frame. And let's get straight into it.